Right, 20th of January 2026, second part to the data or discussion on Mercury. So if you haven't watched the first post, you need to watch the first post of the same date. Otherwise, you're going to miss exactly what we're talking about. All right, so this is 1911 Encyclopedia Britannica, so 115 years ago, and you have it there behind me. And I must point out, you know, that encyclopedia here, you're looking at 33,000 pages of data, and the data is really, really incredible. So I'm going to go straight into it. I'm not going to, it's about 6 pages, so obviously I'm not reading, but I'm going to give you some pointers. And I have found this volume of Encyclopedia Britannica on Internet Archive. So I've put the link also in the description. Go on Internet Archive, go and read for yourself. As it's all I can recommend is read for yourself, because by the time we finish this post and the third part, just because of the sheer amount of data, I think you should be able to go and make up your own mind. Well, I've certainly made up my own mind already, but you know, I won't say much. I'll let you work out, and I'll give the questions. I'll play the devil's advocate. All right, so Mercury, okay, metallic element, we know this. And it will say here, this metal does not appear to have been known to the ancient Jews, nor is it mentioned by the earlier Greek writers. Theophrastus, about 300 BC, mentioned it as prepared from cinnabar by treatment with copper and vinegar. And we're going to see that cinnabar is the main ore of mercury. Okay? Then here it goes on. When about the beginning of the 16th century, so 1500s, chemistry and scientific medicine came to merge into one, this same mysterious element of mercury played a great part in the theories of pathology, and the metal in the free as in certain combined states came to be looked upon as a powerful medicinal agent. Right, so I'm doing very careful because this is a very delicate book. And I use these, which is probably not very clever, but the sheets are like very thin paper sheets. Now it says here, the most important mercury mines in Europe are those of Almaden in Spain and Idria in Illyria, which is Slovenia now. And in America, those of California and Texas. Deposits also occur in Russia, the Bavaria, Hungary, Italy, Transylvania, Bohemia, Mexico, Peru, and in some other countries. Then it goes on about describing its formations, so you can read that for yourself. As I said, I'm not claiming to be a chemist in any way whatsoever, but so the stuff that's very chemistry oriented, I wouldn't be able to really give you a dissertation on that. I'd have to look up all the stuff myself. Then it goes on about the production. It says, at one time, the world's supply of mercury was almost entirely derived from the Almaden and Idrian mines, so Spain and Slovenia. But now the greater proportion is produced in California and Texas, where cinnabar was used by the Indians as a pigment and first turned to metallurgical purposes in 1845. Then it gives a chart of the production, total metric tons. So following on from my first post where I've explained the amount. Okay, then I'm going to jump. Then it goes on about the production, you know, how it's produced and so on. Then it goes on about the properties. And this will take up in the electrical properties. We're going to take up in my third post, because these are the other books. And I'm just using this one at the moment. Encyclopedia, but it does go on about all its properties, which are really quite extraordinary, and its use in electricity. And it was also involved in the definition of the ohm, which I didn't know, OHM. Here we go. So that's that. Then it gives a little point, a very interesting point here, because we'll see that in the other books. Pure mercury remains unchanged in dry air, oxygen, nitrous oxide, carbon dioxide, ammonia, and some other gases at ordinary temperatures. Hence its application for collecting and measuring gases. And as I said, we'll discuss more in when we get onto Yours dictionary. But what's important there is this property was essential for Priestley to discover oxygen. So I thought that was very, very interesting, because I knew Priestley had discovered oxygen. I didn't realize that's what he used. Then it goes on into describing all the different compounds of mercury and their properties and what they can be used for. Now I'm going to jump straight to the pharmacology and therapeutics, because this is where it gets very, very interesting. It says the use of mercury, so there's a section here, pharmacology and therapeutics. The use of mercury as a therapeutic agent is of comparatively recent date. To the Greeks and Romans, its value was unknown, and the Arabian physicians only used it for skin affections. It's interesting that Arabian doctors used it for skin problems. It was not till the middle of the 16th century, 1500s, that the special properties of mercury were fully appreciated. So, you know, if we're looking at this date, we're looking at 500 years, right? So don't think that for 500 years, they didn't know that mercury was toxic in certain forms, because it was well known, as we will see in a minute. Okay, it says, it was not till the middle of the 16th century that the special properties of mercury were fully appreciated. But since that time, the metal has continued to hold a high, though fluctuating value as a medicine. Now it goes on, which is really interesting, because it says, but very soon its various compounds were found to be endowed with powers even greater than those of the metal itself. And with the discovery of new compounds, the number of mercurial medicines has largely increased. And then it goes on about the British Pharmacopoeia contains some 25 mercurial preparations. And what is interesting is that's the British Pharmacopoeia. And then I told you in my first post about the United States Dispensatory, which also has those mercurial preparations. So it wasn't just in the United States. The British Pharmacopoeia, this is 1911, so we're looking at data from the 1800s or earlier. The British Pharmacopoeia also had those mercurial preparations. So just keep that in mind. And which would mean Europe would also have it. So here it says only the useful preparations will be mentioned here. And it goes on and describes a lot of preparations. There's a lot of chemical nomenclature that I personally don't know. So I'm going to leave that for you to look at if you're a chemist or you like chemistry, because chemistry is not my forte, I'm afraid. It's more physics. You'll find that very interesting. But I will read you a few things here, because now we come to the very interesting things. Metallic mercury can be absorbed by the skin, passing in minute globules through the ducts of the sweat glands. And then it goes on. So this is how it passes. But it goes on about how it affects the skin, how it doesn't affect the skin, how it passes through. And what's really interesting here, it says the mercuric salts, and especially the chloride and iodide, are probably the most powerful of all known antiseptics. 1 part of the perchloride of mercury in 500,000 will prevent the growth of anthrax bacilli, so the bacterium. And 1 part in 2,000, the strength commonly employed in surgery, kills all known bacteria. The action is apparently specific, which is quite interesting. And it says, and it goes on about iodide. It uses loads of terminology, so I'm not reading it because I can't quite translate it. But then it goes on. Let me read it, because here you go. As these drugs are essentially poisons, they must be used with the greatest care in surgical practice. And as they are particularly deleterious, so damaging, to the secreting structure of the kidney, they must not be employed as antiseptics in diseases where renal inflammation is already present or probable. So what I want to point out here is very, very detailed as far as the toxicity on kidneys. And if you do a search, you will find that it will say, oh yeah, mercury is very toxic on kidneys, even on ChatGPT and Gemini and all that nonsense on the internet. So this is known, but this is well known. This is what I'm trying to point out to you, is the data is well known already, like a long time ago. Because quite often when you're trying to solve these problems, and if you use, you know, Google or whatever, I think there's a lot of false information that gives the idea that all these things were discovered in the 1900s or, you know, recently. Well, actually, no, because it's been known for a long, long, long time. So anyway, it says here, so, okay, so it's not good for if a person's got any sort of kidney problems or kidney disease. So it says they are therefore contraindicated for application to the throat in scarlet fever or to the uterus in eclampsia. The stronger mercurial ointments kill cutaneous parasites, so parasites of the skin, and also possess some degree of antipruritic action, so this anti-itching. So, and it goes on about, you know, various things, and it says it is important to observe that the volatility of metallic mercury, so the fact that the vapors and many of its compounds causes the absorption by the lungs even when no such effect is intended. This fact explains the occurrence of chronic mercurial poisoning in certain trades, like the hatting trade at the time, where, you know, a lot of the people working in making hat factories would become quite ill, where the term Mad Hatter came from. Now, it does say single doses of mercury or its compounds have no action upon the mouth, the characteristic salivation being produced only after many doses. Then it says here, which is quite interesting, so I'll probably explain why myself and my sister were never ill or never got ill from playing with actual elemental mercury, which is incredibly fun for children, I'm afraid. But because it's just amazing, it just kind of reminds me, well, when I think about Terminator 2, you know, that silver Terminator in Terminator 2. Anyway, it says, so relatively inert is metallic mercury that a pound of it, that's about half a kilo, has been given without ill effects in cases of intestinal obstruction, which it was hoped to relieve by the mere weight of the metal. However, half a grain, which is a tiny, you know, weight, the grain weight, I don't know what it is in gram, it's a tiny weight. Half a grain of the perchloride, on the other hand, is a highly toxic dose. So, and then he goes on, so it's well known, and he goes on about all the effects on the guts and purgative effects and so on and so forth, and why its value is for, but it does give some very interesting things here. And it gives all, you know, all different handlings. But it says, mercury is largely used in affections of the alimentary canal and has an obscure but unquestionable value in many cases of heart disease and arterial degeneration. Isn't that interesting? They did not know how, because it's obscure, but it's an unquestionable value in many cases of heart disease and arterial degeneration. But its value in syphilis far outweighs all its other uses. So in curing syphilis, isn't that interesting? And then it goes on about toxicology. It explains the poisoning. It explains the symptoms of poisoning. And what's really interesting is to do with, you know, the amalgam poisoning that you have in the teeth. I know my husband for many, many years suffered. We didn't know it was that. So this is years ago. So we found out about amalgam poisoning because of that. And, you know, like sort of the gums go red, all sorts of stuff. And in the end, he got all his, you know, amalgam fillings removed. And interestingly enough, by the way, in this convention that I discussed in the first part, they do go on about getting rid of amalgam fillings in dentistry, but this is already done. Like, there's loads of alternative solutions for dentistry. So why, if we know that the amalgam filling with the vapors leaches and it does cause poisoning, the fact that it continues to be used, you know, it makes you think, what, to get rid of a few more humans and make people a bit more ill, because the solutions already exist. You get white fillings, no mercury, it works perfectly. So again, perhaps to do with money, you know, instead of people's health. But I digress. However, it's something really interesting here. It says chronic, it talks about acute poisoning and how you solve acute poisoning, which is really, really interesting, just with egg white immediately and other things. And here, chronic poisoning, which I think would apply more to people with amalgam because it's stuck in your teeth. Chronic poisoning is of great importance since any indication of its symptoms must be closely watched for in patients who are under mercurial treatment. Usually, the first symptom is slight tenderness of the teeth while eating and some fetor of the breath. So that's bad breath. These symptoms become more marked and the gums become the seat of severe inflammation, being spongy, vascular, and prone to bleed. And it goes on about some more things. And even the teeth become quite loose and may fall out. And then it goes on about more symptoms, which get worse and worse and worse until the person dies. But listen to this. The treatment consists, besides stopping the intake of poison, obviously, and relieving the symptoms, in the administration of potassium iodide in small, often repeated doses. Potassium iodide is what you get in Lugol's iodide. And I would really recommend going onto Dr. John Campbell's channel on YouTube and Dr. Berg's channel on YouTube, because both these individuals discuss iodine quite extensively. And I can only talk for myself because I didn't realize that Lugol's iodide, which I take every day, is actually potassium iodide. Has got it in it. So it's kind of bizarre because I put 2 drops of iodine in potassium water with lemon and everything. And I had no idea that Lugol's iodide already got it in it. But maybe that's why I'm quite well, because I don't have any illnesses. You know, I'm 50. I've had 1 paracetamol in my life. I don't know. Maybe it's all the magnesium that I take, because I take a lot of magnesium. Who knows? Who knows? But anyway, it was very interesting that it's written here. And this was known. This is 1911. So that's Encyclopedia Britannica. I put the links. You can go on Internet Archives. And I'm going to do the 3rd part in the next couple of days. I will not do any other post apart from the 3rd part, because the 3rd part I need to cover what's in Yours Dictionary, right, of mines and mining, and the Practical Dictionary of Mechanics, and also a couple of other books I have on the electrical properties of mercury. So I hope that's really helpful. And for those who are very interested in it, you can just go and look at all the information. And for those who've had doubts about what was happening and asked me to look at my books, thank you very much. Because, yeah, you are right. You are right. Absolutely right. There's something very, very dodgy going on. So go and have a look at the convention website and you can see even how more dodgy it is. But I won't get into it. Okay.